A single father let an Apache widow stay, unaware that she was running from her past. It was a quiet evening in the small town of Willow Creek, a place where everyone knew each other, yet life moved slowly and gently. John, a single father, sat in his modest living room, the soft glow of a lamp casting shadows across the walls. The house felt unusually empty that night, a silence that pressed against him like a heavy blanket. Raising two children alone had not been easy. Ever since his wife, Emily, had passed away 2 years ago, John had struggled to fill the space she once occupied, not just in the home, but in his heart. Every meal he cooked, every bedtime story he told, reminded him of the absence of the woman who had once made this house a home. John's children, Lily and Max, were young, lively, and full of questions about the world. Lily, aged 10, was curious and bold, often asking questions that John didn't have answers to. Max, who was 7, was quieter, more thoughtful, and often clung to his father when he sensed sadness in the room. The two children were his world, and he did everything to keep their lives normal, even if that meant staying up late, fixing broken toys, or listening to bedtime fears that made his own heart ache. On this particular evening, John was finishing up some paperwork at the kitchen table. Bills, school forms, and reminders of things he had to do piled around him. Outside, the wind had started to pick up, shaking the old windows and rustling the trees. Rain began to fall lightly, tapping against the roof like a soft, persistent drum. The kind of rain that made one want to stay inside, wrapped in blankets, away from the cold and wet. As John leaned back in his chair and rubbed his tired eyes, he heard a knock at the front door. It was an unusual time for visitors. Most people in Willow Creek were home with their families by now. He frowned slightly, wondering who it could be. Setting his papers aside, he walked to the door and looked through the small window. Standing there, soaked from the rain, was a woman. Her clothes were wet, clinging to her frame, and her dark hair was plastered to her face. There was something in her eyes, an urgent, almost pleading look, that made John's chest tighten. "Hello," he said cautiously, opening the door. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" The woman nodded, shivering. I'm sorry to bother you," she said softly, her voice calm but tired. I need a place to stay for a night, please." John hesitated. He didn't usually allow strangers into his home, but something about her demeanor made him pause. She didn't seem dangerous, just tired, frightened, and alone. He glanced past her toward the street, empty and glistening with rain, and then back at the woman. There was a sadness in her eyes that reminded him of the feeling he carried every day, the quiet ache of loneliness. I guess you can come in," he said finally, "but just for tonight. We don't usually have visitors." The woman's face softened with relief. "Thank you," she whispered. "I promise I won't be any trouble." John stepped aside and let her in. As she entered, she shook herself lightly, and the droplets of rain fell onto the doormat. The house smelled faintly of vanilla and old wood. The children were in the living room, Max building a small tower with blocks and Lily drawing in her sketchbook. When they saw the woman, Lily's eyes widened, but she didn't say anything. Max looked curious but remained quiet. "This is my kids," John said, introducing them. "Lily, Max, this is someone who needs a place to stay for a night." The woman smiled gently at them, kneeling slightly to meet their eyes. "Hello, Lily, Max. My name is Maria," she said warmly. There was a softness in her tone that immediately put the children at ease. Lily studied her carefully, noticing the gentle way she spoke, the kind smile, and the way her eyes seemed to hold stories. Max, ever cautious, still glanced at his father, as if silently asking if this was safe. John nodded, giving him reassurance. Maria hung her wet coat by the door and dried her hair with a small towel John offered her. She moved carefully through the house, polite and quiet, but there was an air of mystery about her. She didn't share much about herself at first, just smiled and thanked John for his kindness. It was enough for now. After giving her a spare blanket and a warm cup of tea, John sat back down, feeling the familiar mix of emotions he had learned to live with: worry, responsibility, and a quiet hope that life might still hold some surprises. The children were curious and kept glancing at Maria, whispering to each other, but they didn't bother her. For a few hours, the house felt like it had regained a sense of warmth and life that had been missing for a long time. Over the next few days, Maria settled into the household quietly. She helped with chores, cooked meals, and even read bedtime stories to the children when John was exhausted. She was gentle, caring, and patient, everything a father wished for in someone who spent time with his children. John noticed how naturally the children responded to her presence. They laughed more, asked more questions, and even helped with chores with a new energy. There was an ease in the house that had been missing for years. Yet, despite her warmth and helpfulness, Maria remained a mystery. She rarely spoke about her past, and when asked, she would gently change the subject. John didn't push her. There was a quiet understanding between them. Some things were meant to be discovered in time. Still, John sometimes caught glimpses of something deeper in her eyes, a shadow of worry, a flicker of fear that didn't match the calm she showed in front of the children. One rainy evening, as the wind howled outside and the children were asleep, John and Maria sat in the living room with the fire crackling softly. The room smelled of wood smoke and tea, a comforting combination. Maria held her cup close, staring into the fire. "You've built a beautiful home here, John," she said quietly. "It must have been hard raising them alone." John sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It has been lonely," he admitted. "There are days when I feel like I'm failing them, like I'm not enough, but I try." "I have to," Maria nodded, her eyes reflecting the flickering flames. "You're doing better than you think," she said. "The children, they're lucky to have you." For the first time, there was a pause, a quiet moment between two people who shared unspoken pain. John looked at Maria, sensing a depth in her that mirrored his own struggles. He didn't know her story, but he felt a connection. A sense that perhaps they were both running from something or toward something better. Days turned into a week, and Maria became an irreplaceable part of their small household. She laughed with the children, helped John with daily tasks, and even shared little stories about her childhood, careful not to reveal too much. But behind her smile, there remained a secret, one that weighed heavily on her heart. John noticed small things. The way Maria sometimes stared out the window for long periods, the subtle tension in her shoulders, and the hurried phone calls she occasionally received. But he didn't question her. He trusted her, believing that kindness deserved trust in return. And Maria, for all her fears, began to feel something she hadn't experienced in a long time: safety. It was a fragile peace, one built on trust, care, and the quiet rhythms of daily life. John, the children, and Maria had unknowingly created a delicate balance, a small family formed not by blood, but by circumstance, compassion, and hope. And yet, as peaceful as things seemed, the shadow of Maria's past lingered, waiting quietly beyond the walls of the little house on Willow Creek. It was only a matter of time before the secrets she carried would find a way to surface, testing the bonds they had all begun to form. But for now, in the warmth of the fire and the gentle rain outside, there was comfort, laughter, and a shared sense of survival. John felt a spark of hope he hadn't felt in years, and the children, blissfully unaware of the challenges ahead, found joy in their new friend's presence. And Maria, though her heart carried fears and memories she hadn't yet faced, allowed herself to feel something she had long denied: belonging. This was just the beginning, a fragile, beautiful start to a story none of them could have imagined. Days passed, and life in John's home continued with a gentle rhythm. The children laughed, played, and grew more comfortable with Maria's presence. She had become a quiet but essential part of their lives, always there with a helping hand, a kind word, or a comforting smile. John, too, had grown used to the warmth she brought. He often found himself smiling at small moments. Maria fixing Max's favorite toy, helping Lily with her schoolwork, or sharing quiet conversation in the evenings by the fire. But beneath the surface of this peaceful life, shadows from Maria's past quietly lingered. She had shared only fragments of her story, childhood memories, a love she had lost, and the hardships she had faced. But the deeper truth remained locked away, hidden behind careful words and polite smiles. She had always been a survivor, someone who had learned to hide her fears and protect herself from the dangers that had once threatened her. And now, even in this small town, she could not completely escape the weight of what she had left behind. It started with small signs, almost imperceptible at first. Maria would sometimes pause mid-sentence, as if listening to something no one else could hear. She would look out the window at the empty street and tense, her eyes scanning for threats that might not exist. Occasionally, she would receive phone calls from unknown numbers, and she would step outside to answer, speaking quietly, her voice tight with urgency. John noticed these things but hesitated to ask, not wanting to intrude or make her uncomfortable. He trusted her, and he believed that she would share when she was ready. Then came the evening that changed everything. It was a quiet Saturday, and the children had gone to bed early, exhausted from a day of playing in the rain-soaked yard. John and Maria sat together in the living room, a soft fire flickering in the fireplace. The house was peaceful, but there was a tension in the air, subtle but undeniable. Maria sipped her tea slowly, her hands wrapped around the warm cup, and John studied her carefully. "Maria," he began gently, "I can see that something is worrying you. You don't have to talk if you're not ready, but I want you to know that we care about you. I care about you. Whatever it is, we can face it together." Maria's eyes met his, and for a moment the warmth of her smile faltered. She looked down at her hands, twisting the cup nervously. "John, I don't know if I can tell you everything yet," she whispered. "There are things I've been running from, things I can't escape. I didn't come here just by chance. I came here because I thought I could find safety, even if only for a little while. But the past, it always catches up." John reached out, placing a reassuring hand on hers. "You don't have to face it alone anymore," he said softly. "You have a place here, you have us. Whatever is chasing you, we'll deal with it together." Tears welled in Maria's eyes, and for the first time, she allowed herself to feel the weight of the fear she had carried for so long. She spoke slowly, carefully, revealing just enough to explain why she had left her home, why she had wandered, and why she had come to this small town. Her voice trembled as she described the struggles she had faced, the people she had escaped, and the constant fear that had haunted her every step. She did not go into every detail, protecting the children from the full extent of her story, but John listened intently, offering silent support and understanding. As she spoke, John realized the depth of her courage. She had survived more than most people could imagine, facing danger, loss, and fear with determination and resilience. Yet now, in this quiet home, she had begun to allow herself a moment of vulnerability, a rare and precious gift. John felt a surge of admiration and empathy, and he knew that his role was to provide her with the stability and safety she had never known. But just as they were beginning to feel a fragile sense of security, a knock at the door shattered the calm. It was late, and the sound echoed through the quiet house like a warning. John's heart skipped a beat, and he instinctively rose from his seat, moving toward the door. Maria's eyes widened, and a flash of fear crossed her face. "Stay here," John whispered, his voice steady but firm. He opened the door slowly, peering out into the darkness. Standing there were two men, strangers with serious expressions. They did not smile. They did not greet. They only stared. "Maria," one of them called, his tone sharp and demanding. "We need to talk, now." Maria's face went pale, and she instinctively stepped back. I can't go with you," she said, her voice trembling. "Please, I've moved on. I've found a safe place. I'm not going anywhere." John stepped in front of her, his body tense. "You're not taking her anywhere," he said firmly. "She's safe here. Now leave or I'll call the authorities." The men exchanged a glance, their expressions hardening. "You don't understand," one of them said. "This is not a request. She needs to come with us." Maria's eyes filled with tears and she gripped John's arm. "Please, they'll hurt me if I go," she whispered. "I can't go back." John felt a surge of protectiveness. He would not let anyone threaten the woman and children under his care. He called the police, his voice steady as he explained the situation. The men hesitated, realizing that they were now exposed, and eventually left, muttering threats that sent chills down John's spine. For the first time, the danger Maria had been fleeing became real in John's home. He realized that her past was not just a story she had told. There were real people looking for her, real threats that could not be ignored. He knew that the life they had begun to build together was fragile and could be shattered if they were not careful. That night, after the men had gone, John and Maria sat together in the living room, the fire crackling softly. The children were asleep upstairs, unaware of the danger that had come so close. Maria leaned against John, exhausted and shaken, and he held her, offering comfort and protection. "I didn't want them to find me," Maria whispered. "I thought I could hide forever. But now I don't know if I can keep running." "You don't have to run anymore," John said gently. "We'll face this together. You're not alone anymore. You have a home, a family, and people who care about you. Whatever comes next, we'll handle it together." Over the next few days, life in the house changed. John took extra precautions, locking doors, keeping a watchful eye, and ensuring the children were never in danger. Maria began to share more of her story, though still carefully. She talked about the people she had escaped, the mistakes she had made, and the lessons she had learned. With each story, John grew more certain that Maria's past, while painful and dangerous, had also made her strong, compassionate, and resilient. The children sensed the tension, but also felt the safety of John and Maria's presence. They continued to laugh and play, though occasionally Lily would glance toward Maria with curiosity, sensing the unspoken worry in her eyes. Max, ever perceptive, sometimes asked quiet questions, and Maria would answer gently, careful not to frighten him. Through it all, a bond grew between John and Maria, a connection forged through shared responsibility, trust, and the quiet understanding of each other's fears. They were no longer just housemates or friends. They were allies, protectors, and slowly, something more. The danger from Maria's past had brought them closer, showing them that even in the darkest times, human connection and courage could create strength and hope. Yet even as they faced these challenges together, the shadow of the past remained. John knew that this was only the beginning, that the real test of trust, courage, and resilience was yet to come. And Maria, for the first time in years, allowed herself to hope, not just for safety, but for a life where she could belong, be loved, and finally feel at home. For now, in the warmth of the small house, with the children asleep upstairs, John and Maria clung to the fragile peace they had created, knowing that the future was uncertain, but that together they could face whatever came next. The quiet, brave bond they shared became a foundation, a shield against the challenges ahead. And for the first time in a long while, Maria allowed herself to imagine a life not defined by fear, but by love, trust, and the promise of new beginnings. The days after the encounter with the strangers were tense. John had never felt so protective in his life. Every time he heard a sound outside the house, the rustling of leaves, a car passing by, or even the wind, his heart would race. Maria, too, seemed restless. She no longer moved around the house with her usual calm and gentle rhythm. Her eyes darted to windows, doors, and every shadow. Though she tried to hide it, the children noticed her nervous glances. Lily would sometimes ask, "Maria, are you okay?" And Maria would smile softly, reassuring her, "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little tired." But John could see through it. He knew that her past had finally caught up with her in a way she could no longer ignore. One morning, John decided that they could not continue living in fear. He gathered the courage to have a serious conversation with Maria. They sat at the kitchen table while the children were at school. The sunlight streamed through the windows, but the warmth outside did not reach the tension in the room. "Maria," John began, "we can't keep pretending that everything is fine. Those men who came here, they're going to come back if we don't take this seriously. You can't hide forever. We need a plan, a way to keep you safe and make sure they don't hurt anyone here." Maria looked down at her hands, twisting them nervously. "I know," she said quietly. "I've spent years running and I thought I could keep escaping, but now it's different. I have people here who care about me, people I don't want to put in danger. I can't let them get hurt because of me." John reached across the table, placing a reassuring hand on hers. "You won't put anyone in danger. We'll figure this out together. You're not alone anymore, Maria. I promise you that." For the first time, Maria allowed herself to breathe a little easier. Though fear still lingered, she felt a sense of hope she had not known in years. John's words gave her strength, the strength to face the danger head-on rather than hide from it forever. That evening, they began to prepare. John called a trusted friend in town, someone who had experience with difficult situations and could help protect them if needed. He made sure the children were safe and unaware of the full extent of the danger. Meanwhile, Maria gathered what she needed: important documents, a few belongings, and the courage she had been building over weeks of quiet support and love. The night arrived. Rain had begun to fall again, the same gentle tapping against the roof that had first brought Maria to their door. The house seemed unusually quiet, the world outside dim and shadowy. John stationed himself near the windows, while Maria kept to the center of the living room. Every creak of the floor, every whisper of wind against the walls made their hearts race. Then they arrived. The strangers from before, along with two others, approached the house. Their expressions were serious, their eyes sharp. They did not call out this time. They simply moved with a quiet, dangerous precision. John's grip tightened on the edge of the table. Maria's hands shook slightly, but she stood tall, refusing to show fear. John opened the door slowly, stepping forward. "This ends tonight," he said firmly. "You are not taking Maria anywhere." One of the men stepped forward. "You don't understand," he said coldly. "She belongs with us. You cannot stop this." Maria stepped beside John, her voice strong despite the tremble in her chest. "I belong here," she said. "I belong with people who care about me. I am not going anywhere with you." For a tense moment, no one spoke. Then, as if on cue, a few neighbors, alerted by John's earlier calls, appeared, standing at the edges of the property. Their presence was quiet but firm, a silent warning to the strangers. Realizing that they were outnumbered and exposed, the men hesitated. John seized the opportunity. "Leave now," he commanded, his voice unwavering. "You will not come near this house again. If you do, the authorities will be involved." The strangers exchanged glances, then slowly backed away, muttering threats that faded into the rain-soaked night. Maria exhaled a long breath, relief washing over her. For the first time in years, she felt the safety she had longed for, real safety, not the fragile, temporary kind she had known while running. In the days that followed, life in the house began to regain its gentle rhythm. The children played in the yard again, laughter filling the spaces that had once been tense with fear. Maria helped with chores, cooked meals, and spent time with the children, her heart lighter than it had been in years. Yet the memory of those moments of fear remained, a reminder of the strength and courage it had taken to face the danger. John and Maria grew closer during this time. Shared responsibility, trust, and the challenges they had faced together forged a bond that went beyond friendship. They spoke quietly in the evenings, sharing thoughts, dreams, and hopes for the future. Slowly, Maria began to open up about the life she had left behind, the mistakes, the losses, and the people she had once loved. John listened patiently, never judging, only offering understanding and support. The children, too, had begun to sense the deep connection between John and Maria. Lily would often sketch pictures of the three of them together, while Max asked questions about family, love, and friendship. Maria answered carefully, wanting to protect their innocence while also teaching them lessons about courage, honesty, and trust. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned shades of orange and pink, John and Maria sat together on the porch, watching the children play in the yard. The world felt calm, the air soft and warm. "I never thought I could feel this safe," Maria said quietly. "Not just physically, but emotionally. You've given me a life I didn't know I could have again." John took her hand, holding it gently. "You've given me hope too," he said. "I thought I was living in a world without surprises, without joy. But you've reminded me what it feels like to have someone to care about, someone to fight for." Maria smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I was afraid for so long, afraid I'd never belong anywhere. But now I know I can, here, with you." With them, she gestured to the children playing, their laughter carrying through the yard. "This is where I belong." John pulled her into a gentle embrace. "We'll face whatever comes next together," he said. "No more running, no more hiding. We have each other, and that's what matters." As the night settled over Willow Creek, a quiet peace settled in the house. The fire crackled softly in the living room. The children slept soundly upstairs, and John and Maria sat together, knowing that the challenges of the past had brought them to this moment of hope, trust, and love. Though the shadows of Maria's past would always be a part of her story, she no longer faced them alone. With John and the children by her side, she had a family that would protect her, support her, and remind her of the strength she had always carried within herself. And in that small, quiet house, they all realized something profound. Life could be unpredictable and even dangerous, but with courage, trust, and love, they could overcome anything. The bond they had formed, born from struggle, fear, and compassion, was unbreakable. They were no longer just a single father, a fleeing widow, and two children. They were a family, stronger for everything they had endured, ready to face the future together. That night, as rain continued to fall softly on the roof, Maria allowed herself to finally sleep without fear, wrapped in the warmth and safety of the home she had longed for. John, too, felt a sense of peace he had not known since Emily's passing. And the children dreamed blissfully, unaware of the danger that had passed, but feeling the love and security that surrounded them. The past had chased Maria and she had faced it, but she had emerged stronger, braver, and more connected than ever before. And in the quiet moments of the night, the small house on Willow Creek stood as a testament to resilience, courage, and the enduring power of family. The weeks that followed the confrontation with the strangers marked a turning point in John and Maria's lives. The tension that had once hung over the house like a storm cloud slowly began to lift. The children laughed more freely, running through the yard without fear, while Maria moved through the house with a calm she had not known for years. Though the memory of past dangers lingered, it no longer controlled their lives. They had faced it together, and in doing so, they had built a bond stronger than any fear. John and Maria spent their days in quiet routines that brought them comfort. Mornings began with shared breakfasts, the aroma of toast, eggs, and fresh coffee filling the kitchen. Maria often helped the children with school projects, patiently guiding them through math problems or reading assignments, while John handled chores and errands. In the evenings, they would sit together on the porch, watching the sun set over the quiet streets of Willow Creek, the world outside soft and peaceful. The children had fully embraced Maria as part of their family. Lily would often curl up on the couch with her sketchbook, sharing her drawings with Maria, who praised her talent and encouraged her creativity. Max, once shy and reserved, had become more confident, happily showing Maria the little inventions and games he created. Their laughter filled the house, a sound that had been missing for so long, replacing the quiet tension that had once dominated every corner. John watched these moments with a heart full of gratitude. He realized that, in offering Maria a place to stay, he had not only helped her but had also brought new life into his own home. The children had gained a loving figure in their lives, and he had found companionship, understanding, and a partner in facing the challenges of life. Maria had become a part of their world in a way that no one could have predicted, and John felt a deep sense of peace he had not experienced since Emily's passing. One afternoon, Maria and John sat in the garden, tending to the small patch of vegetables and flowers they had planted together. The sun was warm, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. Maria smiled as she carefully watered the plants, her hands steady and sure. "I never thought I'd be able to feel normal again," she said softly. "For so long I lived in fear, always running, never trusting anyone, but now I feel like I finally have a place where I belong." John nodded, smiling. "You do belong here, Maria. You've worked so hard and you've been brave. You don't have to run anymore. We're here for you always." Maria's eyes glistened with tears, not of sadness but of relief and gratitude. She realized that the life she had longed for, a life of safety, love, and belonging, was no longer a distant dream. It was real, and it was right in front of her. Over the next few months, their family settled into a rhythm that felt natural and comforting. John and Maria shared responsibilities, supported each other, and created an environment where the children could thrive. They celebrated small victories together, Lily winning a school art contest, Max learning to ride his bike without training wheels, and Maria finally finding a local job that allowed her to contribute while still caring for the household. Each day brought a new moment of joy, a small step toward healing and happiness. But it wasn't just the day-to-day life that strengthened their bond. It was the way they faced challenges together. When Maria received news of a distant relative in trouble, John was by her side, helping her make difficult decisions and offering support without judgment. When the children faced struggles at school, both John and Maria were there to guide them, offering comfort, advice, and encouragement. In every challenge, they became stronger as a family, learning to trust in each other's strength and resilience. One evening, as autumn leaves began to fall, John decided it was time to address something he had been feeling for a long time. He and Maria sat together by the fireplace, the children asleep upstairs, and the house bathed in the warm glow of the fire. "Maria," he began gently, "I want you to know how much you mean to all of us. You've changed our lives in ways I can't fully express. The children love you, and so do I. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that I want you to be a permanent part of our family." Maria looked at him, her heart swelling with emotion. "John, I never imagined I could feel this way again. I was so used to running, to hiding, to feeling alone. But now, I feel like I've found home. I've found people who care about me, who believe in me. And I care about all of you too." For a long moment they sat in silence, letting the weight of their words and feelings settle. It was a moment of clarity, of mutual understanding, and of hope. They both knew that life would continue to have challenges, but they also knew that they would face them together, as a family united by trust, love, and courage. The following weeks were filled with preparations for a small celebration. John and Maria wanted to mark a new beginning, a moment of gratitude and joy for the life they were building together. They invited neighbors and friends from Willow Creek, people who had supported them in small ways during the past months. The house was decorated simply but warmly, with flowers, candles, and the laughter of children echoing through the rooms. On the day of the celebration, Maria stood in the garden, looking around at the people who had become a part of their lives. She felt a deep sense of belonging, a feeling she had longed for during years of uncertainty and fear. John joined her, taking her hand gently. "This is just the beginning," he said softly. We have so many more memories to create, so many more moments to share." Maria smiled, tears of happiness in her eyes. "I know," she whispered, "and I'm ready for them. With you, with the children, with all of this, I'm ready." The celebration continued into the evening with music, laughter, and storytelling. Neighbors shared kind words, children played games, and Maria felt the warmth of a community that had accepted her without judgment. John watched her, feeling pride and gratitude. He had given her a chance, and she had embraced it, bringing light and love into their lives. As the night grew quiet and the guests left, John, Maria, and the children sat together by the fire. They talked about their dreams, their hopes, and the life they wanted to build. Each word, each gesture, reinforced the bond they had created, a bond stronger than fear, stronger than the past, and stronger than any challenge they might face in the future. In the months and years that followed, life continued with its usual ups and downs. But the family that had been formed in the small house on Willow Creek remained strong. John and Maria continued to support each other, raising the children with love, guidance, and care. They celebrated milestones, faced difficulties, and grew closer with each passing day. The house, once quiet and lonely, was now filled with warmth, laughter, and the comfort of belonging. Maria often reflected on her journey, the years of running, the fear, and the uncertainty, and she realized how far she had come. She had faced her past, confronted danger, and found a place where she could be herself. More than that, she had found a family who loved her, a home where she was safe, and a future filled with hope. John, too, found a sense of peace and fulfillment he had not known since his wife's passing. He had opened his home to a stranger, and in doing so, he had discovered love, courage, and the resilience of the human heart. Together with Maria and the children, he had created a life that was richer, fuller, and more meaningful than he could have imagined. The story of their journey, the single father, the Apache widow, and the two children, was one of courage, trust, and the transformative power of kindness. It showed that even in the face of fear and uncertainty, love and compassion could create bonds stronger than any challenge. And in the quiet moments, when the children slept peacefully and the fire crackled softly, John and Maria knew that they had found something rare and precious. A family united not by blood, but by heart, courage, and the unwavering belief in a better tomorrow. As the seasons changed, the house on Willow Creek remained a symbol of hope. The laughter of children, the gentle smiles of Maria, and the quiet strength of John filled every corner, a testament to the journey they had endured together. And while life would continue to bring challenges, they faced each one with courage, love, and the certainty that they were stronger together than apart. In the end, Maria's past no longer defined her. She had faced it, survived it, and moved beyond it. She had discovered a life filled with trust, warmth, and family, a life she could finally call her own. And John, the children, and Maria together knew that the story of their lives was far from over. It was only beginning, a story of hope, resilience, and the extraordinary power of the human heart to heal, forgive, and love.